Jets head to Philly trying to end the nightmarish end to this season thanks to injuries. Speaking of injuries, will Sam Darnold be ready? And if not, what are their chances? Speaking of chances, what are the Jets' chances of making the playoffs, and how is it possible, if at all? And we'll also go over the all-time Jets team and let you know where they got it right and wrong, as well as our picks for greatest player, game, and much more, as Jets FM on AOFN for this Wednesday, the 2nd of October, 2019, brought to you by ourlads.com, providing the best New York Jets depth charts in the business, and Athlon Sports, the leading publisher of preseason annuals for more than 50 years, sold in 60,000 outlets nationwide. So, Jan, we didn't get a chance to talk last week with the bye, so we basically had our own little bye, but we're back and ready to go. Fortunately, we're not sure if Sam Darnold or C.J. Mosley are ready to go, and I kind of feel a little bit robbed because, I don't know, I was getting the indication that they were going to play this week, and that's looking like if we're flipping a coin,
it's probably the best way to refer to it.
It's less than 50%.
I go iffy at that. It's kind of weird. So I think I'm a bit more surprised at Darnold not playing as opposed to Mosley. I thought Mosley, given groin injury, given that it could take longer than expected for him to come back, I thought Darnold had made sufficient enough progress where they weren't concerned that the spleen was still inflamed and have a problem. But clearly that's not the case. I mean, hopefully we get lucky. And we can kind of get Darnold back. Clearly, Mosley, losing him has been a boot on the defense.
Yep.
He's their leader. He's really their captain of their defense. But we see what's happened since Darnold's been out and how much it's impacted the team. So getting their number one quarterback, to me, would be a slightly larger impact than getting Mosley back, not to discount the Mosley effect as well. But getting Darnold back would have a much more material impact, in my opinion.
Oh, I don't even think it's close because at this point, the offense – see – we talked in the beginning of the season about a couple things with the offensive line, which everybody's trashing right now, and that is that we knew without being able to get everybody together, no practice time, it was going to take half a season. Usually it takes most teams quarter of a season, maybe more, when they integrate new players to the roster. So we were being more than generous in saying half a season before we could really tell whether this offensive line can gel together. Secondly, the offensive line would play better with a more experienced quarterback. So now you throw in the fact that you've got all these changes, they had no practice time together, and now they're on their third quarterback. And I'm sorry, I know people have to earn a living, whether it's broadcasters or writers, and they've got to have an opinion. But I'm not going to force an opinion. I can't have an opinion on the offensive line right now until we see Sam Darnold under center. But as far as just his value to the team, it's more than that. It's they've got to start scoring points, and I think that defensively, I think they could survive, maybe win a high scoring game. But without Sam Darnold, they got no shot.
There's no question about that. I mean, I will go into though. When Khalil was signed, I did mention a little bit that whether or not you believe Pro Football Focus, his metrics last year were not particularly good, and it was a bit concerning when they got him, especially since he really hadn't had a full camp. It was going to take a while to settle in. The acclimation has been a lot slower, I think, than all of us have expected, both in terms of the line. I mean, I think there's no question.
I don't know that. That's what I'm saying. I don't know.
I thought it might be starting to mesh a little better than it has, right? I think that's probably.
But how do you know that with the third string quarterback? I don't know.
Look, there's no question that having the quarterback there hasn't helped matters, but I don't think there's also any question that certain players have not necessarily played particularly well.
Well, look, we understood that this offensive line wasn't a good offensive line. Like it was, if it was going to have a good year, it was going to be like the 50th percentile of offensive lines. That was a good year. That's if everything went well. Everything's gone to the toilet as far as injuries.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's unfair for us to even try and discuss whether Khalil is playing well. And who knows? Maybe he doesn't even start on Sunday. We'll leave that up to the coaching staff to decide.
I mean, Jonathan Harrison has outplayed him to date. That doesn't mean he's a better player, but he clearly has outplayed him to date. So I think it's going to be very interesting in terms of what's going to happen on Sunday. But look, getting Darnold back will cure a lot of the ills that has occurred so far. But it's also very clear that the offensive line has to be better than it's been so far. And I'm all hoping that we're hoping that it just is more of a lack of cohesiveness and chemistry and time
Yeah, we
together,
hope.
as
Yeah.
opposed to a lack as opposed to a lack of
Yeah,
talent.
absolutely. We won't really know that, of course, until the season's over, and hopefully Darnold plays more than 10 games, and then we'll have a realistic opportunity to decide exactly what's going to go on, and that is going to be Douglas's job, is to evaluate. And we knew the offensive line was going to need an infusion of youth. It could be the first pick in the draft for the Jets next year, but there's also still spots like the cornerback position and things of that nature that the Jets are going to have to zero in on. Do I think, like Brian Costello, that the entire roster is a complete mess? No, but he's trying to sell clicks. That's all he's doing. It's just ridiculous to trash this team with all the injuries and the competition. See, if the Jets had lost games to the Redskins, teams like that, then that'd be a different story. But it's the combination of the injuries against the schedule, which has just been brutal. I get furious when I see the fact that we have to play these teams and the Patriots are playing who they're playing.
Well, I mean, look, I think we all expected to lose to the Patriots. That came as no shock. I think the loss to the Browns wasn't the big shock, though. The Jets did have a chance to really make it a game there, make it a one-score game. They didn't score. I mean, I think the problem is when you add on the Bills game, and granted the Bills have played very well to start the season, but when you're up 16-0 in the third quarter and late in the third quarter,
but again, these are all injuries. If everybody's healthy, that's not going to happen.
That's a game that still should be in your hip pocket to win. I think if they were 1-2 as
if
opposed
Darnold
to
doesn't have mono, and if CJ doesn't go down at the end of the third, they win the football game. So I that's what I'm saying. I don't even want to talk about this anymore. We've got other things to talk about. I think what we've talked with these first three games, to me, is nothing. I'm not going to grade this team at all because you can't.
Okay.
It's impossible to grade this team right now. I know. That's what I was saying. Some people have to do it because they're paid to do it and they're forced to do it. We're not. And that's why I'm not going to do it. I think it's a waste of time. I'm sorry if people want me to grade the team, but I just can't do it. I just think, you know what? Let's grade the all-time team. Why don't we do that? Because the all-time,
we can do that. At least we can measure it against history as opposed to the future. Right? So we have a sense of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So the all-time team came out a couple weeks ago, and so a lot to break down here. We all knew Namath was going to be the quarterback. So let me ask you: is it that easy?
Really, not Chad Pennington?
Well, is Chad? Who's the number 2 quarterback all time?
Oh boy, that's wow. You know what? I'm probably going to give it to Pennington.
Yeah. I agree.
I don't think. I mean, again, look, I'm one of those people who believe that if Pennington hadn't had the shoulder injuries that he had, the Jets had a realistic shot to be a very serious contender when he was there. I mean, again, look here. My problem is look, you can argue about Vinny Testaverde, but Vinny wasn't there for that long of a span of time. And one of the years he was there, unfortunately, he lost because of the torn Achilles.
He had 1 year. That's it. That's not enough. And OBrien, unfortunately, got the yips late in his career, which was, I don't know what happened. You know, it happened psychologically to players sometimes, and it happened to him. Otherwise, he could have been number 2 all time. All right, let's go to. I want to break down a few of these positions that, to me, I definitely think are worth debating. And I think what we're seeing here with this team, and it's natural. We've got a lot of current players. So we've got more current players. I don't. Besides the big name guys like Namath, I commend them for having Winston Hill on the team. There's just not enough of the 68 guys, and for instance, there is no way. The guy. I'm sorry. I know he's part of the Jet media. The guy who does not belong on this team at all. It's an absolute joke. Is Greg Buttle. This guy does not belong on this team. Larry Grantham should be on this team.
Absolutely. 100% agree. I don't think there's any question about that in my opinion.
Yeah, Grantham was a 5-time first-team All-Pro player, defensive captain of the Super Bowl team. And I'd much rather have Al Atkinson there as well over Greg Buttle. I'd rather have 10 linebackers before Greg Buttle on the on this team. That's just a joke because he's somebody that does preseason games for the Jets. So that's why he's getting the votes. Here's another guy that I would give consideration at linebacker would be Kyle Clifton, because you're talking.
Okay, I could see Clifton. I don't know if he makes it for me over somebody else, but I can definitely
I put him over
see
Buttle.
Okay, well, again,
everybody over Buttle.
Are you taking him?
Not
again,
over Grantham.
I think Grantham is clearly the one who should be on that team. I mean, the other
who's
one
the
I
top
would go
linebacker?
into. Look, it's hard to argue with Gastineau, Klecko, Lyons, and Abraham.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's very hard. But in my opinion, Jerry Philbin should be on this team.
Okay.
I mean, Jerry Philbin was a very good defensive end. Played 9 years on this squad. Was a big key member of the line during that 68 team. In my opinion, Philbin and Grantham should be in. I think Buttle is definitely on. You can probably argue that I would probably take Philbin over Lyons.
Okay, I could see that. I also think that Shaun Ellis should have came real close to making it. He led all defensive linemen and tackles over his career for the Jets. Very underrated player. Very underrated. I know you can't measure sacks because of when it was recorded, but he is second all time on the team in sacks and also third all time in games played on the defensive side. So I think he should have got some consideration. Who would you have put first, Mo Lewis or David Harris?
Wow, that's very tough. That's a very. I am to like both of them a tremendous amount.
I'd go with Lewis.
Lewis maybe slightly, though you can argue that Lewis kind of screwed the Jets to a certain extent by his hit on Drew Bledsoe.
Yeah.
So if you're going to go that route, look, I loved Harris. I thought Harris was a tremendous linebacker for this team. I think Lewis just maybe was a slightly more talented than Harris, but is really close. Harris was a run-stuffing guy. I just think Lewis was more of maybe a little bit more of a three-down linebacker than Harris might have been. But it's very close between the two. It's kind of hard to argue one or the other. I think you can definitely make a case for either one of them obviously for both being on the team. I don't know. You can argue, a lot as to which one was a more talented linebacker.
And even though he's not in the all-time and is not even considered like top 5 or 6 linebackers of all time, he is the all-time, in my opinion, single game linebacker of all time. Who is it?
Single game linebacker.
Yep, single game linebacker to make plays in one significant game. Come on now.
Drawing a blank.
Lance Mel.
Okay.
Two interceptions in the divisional playoff game. Yep. When they were called the LA Raiders.
Number 56 right in the middle.
Lance Mel, Penn Stater. Okay, let's go to the secondary since we're still on defense. I'm pretty good with the secondary. The one guy, though, that I hope got a lot of consideration was Eric McMillan, because McMillan was a playmaker. He's a guy that had 22 career interceptions in about 35 less games than James Hasty, and he had about the same amount of interceptions. He also had 5 touchdowns. So McMillan was an underrated DB, but I think they got it right in the secondary.
No, I don't have any problems. I don't have any problem with Glenn. Clearly, I don't think any of us have a problem at all with the number one player who's back there, right? With Darrell Revis. That's clearly.
Yep.
You can't really argue with Hasty. Hasty was an extremely good guy.
Yep.
And it's hard to argue with Green. Green was a talented player who was overshadowed by other guys, rightfully so, but was still a guy who held down the position for years and years and years.
And he was on some bad teams where he was leading the team in tackles every year.
Yep.
Just sacrificing his body left and right. So, yeah, absolutely. Okay, quick one, kicking game. This is ridiculous. Tom Tupa. He's just a name. That's why people remember his name. The Jets have never had a great punter, so they put in Tupa. But I'm sorry, you have to have some current guys on the team. Lachlan Edwards has been the best punter, I think, all time for Jets statistically. Tom Tupa is not the best punter for the Jets all time. Come on now.
I mean, I think we're splitting hairs with the Tupa argument. I can understand that. Tupa actually was pretty good. He was also a backup or third-string quarterback.
That's the whole idea.
Granted, although you could argue that Parcells should have gone to Ray Lucas right away
earlier,
as opposed to Tupa, which probably cost them playoffs that year, even though Testaverde was hurt.
Yep.
the question is look, it's kind of hard to argue with Leahy. I mean, if you're going to go historical, you can maybe make a case for Jim Turner based upon his work in the Super Bowl. But Leahy, I think, had the longest tenure.
Yeah,
there.
that's the reason he got it. I will say
I'd say Nick Folk, maybe.
That's where I was going to
history
go.
as well.
Again, a more modern guy that they left off because Faulk had a better career percentage. He had a much stronger leg than Pat Leahy did, and he was also very clutch, Nick Faulk. So I get Leahy because he was, 17 years with the Jets. But Faulk, I think, was a more talented kicker. So I agree with you there.
And probably more clutch at times also.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go to the offense. Now, I'm going to start at, besides the quarterback, and, of course, running back was very easy. The receiver and tight end position, to me, there's no doubt that Keyshawn was left off this team because of his personality. Come on. Keyshawn Johnson was one of the best all-time Jet receivers. It's not even close. He had 31 touchdowns in 62 games, 231 touchdowns in 107 games. I mean, Keyshawn might even be the best all-time receiver the team ever had. He should be on this list. I get why Cribette's on it, but I think it's funny Cribette's on it and not Keyshawn. And at tight end, I get Mickey Shuler. I think he probably should be number one. But I also think another old-timer, Rich Castor, could and maybe should have been the number one guy.
So in terms of receiver, I'm actually okay with the list. I mean, I don't think either one of us will argue with Maynard or Walker.
I'm not going to argue with any of them. I love Al Toon, too.
I think Toon, you and I both will agree that if he hadn't gotten hurt,
yes,
probably would have been in the Hall of Fame, given the talent that he had.
No doubt the injuries hurt.
How good he was.
Absolutely.
And look, I think Cribette may have been the Cribette, Keyshawn argument, but Cribette was a pretty darn good wide receiver and exceedingly clutch for a team, and probably also better with the media to an extent given his history. In terms of Shuler, I understand Shuler. I can understand Castor. One guy that I might have considered slightly was Jerome Barkham.
Okay.
So I think Barkham was a pretty good tight end as well, and a really good blocking tight end. But Shuler was probably one of those guys that had the historical perspective. Also, one more thing I wanted to go into that we didn't kind of get to was on punt returners. I could have also made a case for Bruce Harper as opposed to Leon Walsh.
Yeah, Bruce. Oh, yeah, before Leon. I mean, Bruce was the man. Watching Bruce Harper at Shea Stadium, watching Pat Leahy at Shea Stadium, among others, but on special teams specifically, Bruce was awesome, especially as a third down back. He was one of those jitterbug kids that excited us every time he had the ball in his hands.
Agreed.
Okay. And by the way, statistically, just to point out, Shuler, 160 games, 37 touchdowns. Castor, 107 games, 53 less games, one less touchdown, and he had an 18-yard average, which was pretty awesome for Castor. That's the reason I think Castor could have ended up as the number one guy. But Shuler, more recognizable, more modern, even though it's been a while for Shuler too. Okay, and that just shows you where the Jet tight end situation has been for a long. You know what? If Chris Herndon doesn't get hurt, he's going to probably be the number one guy in this list when his career's over. That's how good. That's how good he is. Okay, now on the offensive line, how funny is it that Mangold beats out the Hall of Famer?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I don't think Mangold is a bad choice. Both of us think that Mangold has a very good shot at making the Hall of Fame, but here you have to go with the Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, I might have tried to figure out a way to put Mangold at center and Mawai at guard.
True, you could have done that, though. Mawai was known as being a center. I mean, the other guy you have to consider also is Marvin Powell.
Sure. Yeah, Marvin
Powell
solid
was a
player.
great offensive lineman. And when the Jets got good and made the AFC title game, Powell was a big reason as to why they ended up dominating the line that season and why Freeman had so many open holes to run through was largely because of Marvin Powell being on the line. Okay,
now let's talk about the best player of all time, not named Joe Namath. Who is it?
Then you got to go Curtis Martin.
Okay, he's your number one.
He's my number one.
All right. Yeah.
Darrelle Revis is probably number two, and it's close between the two of them.
Yeah, to me.
Partly because Martin is obviously retired long enough to make the Hall, though he didn't get in right away. Revis is just waiting for that call when he's retired for long enough.
Give me your top three because we agree with the top two.
It's It's Klecko.
Yep, we agree with the top three. It's Revis,
Klecko
Klecko, and
should
Curtis
be the ball, and
Martin.
I've been saying it for years.
So those are the top three, and hopefully Klecko will get in when they throw what? They're going to put in like 20 guys or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
But if he doesn't get in, he's never getting in this time. So it's a travesty he's not in. We've talked about that enough. Okay, so that's a top player not named Namath. Now, what about best games? Now, they're doing this big wins, games, whatever, moments on NFL Top 100. And 3 Jet wins landed on the NFL 100 Greatest Games list.
Which were?
Which were the 91st greatest game, apparently, was the 86 OBrien Marino game.
Okay, the 51-45 touchdown to Wesley Walker.
Which was my favorite game of all time.
It was a fun game to watch.
Yes.
Again, not defensively pleasing,
No.
but aesthetically pleasing to watch from an offensive perspective.
And also because as a fan, we had our game where OBrien bested Marino.
Yep.
And as one
OBrien
game
was a very good quarterback.
He was very underrated.
He wasn't Marino, and that was the problem. OBrien was a good quarterback. Again, the year they lost, when he got hurt and Pat Ryan went in against Cleveland, if Gastineau doesn't have that stupid sack, they beat Cleveland. They're into the next round.
Yeah, but that was also the year, as I was saying before, that OBrien had the yips. Whatever it was, there was
but also
something.
he got hurt that
he
year.
Did.
Also,
he got hurt.
Did.
And if he would have stayed healthy for another few years, and like you said, Gastineau didn't screw that up, and let's say we get a chance to be in the Super Bowl, OBrien, who knows what could have happened with his, his name and everything else. But hey, it happens.
Hey, I'm still one of those who thinks that if the refs hadn't blown it and Browning Nagel had won his first game as a Jet against Atlanta, his career might have been different because I think he would have been viewed differently.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny how the game in Atlanta, I'll always remember that as a way to make sure that you don't overreact on somebody's first game. Because Nagel looked like Joe Namath in that game.
Yep.
And then that was it. And then we never saw another performance like that out of Nagel.
Correct.
Okay. So other greatest games in the list was number 49 was Namath and Unitas, that classic game when they played a few years after the Super Bowl. That was number 49. And number 43 was the Monday Night Miracle.
I think as a Jet fan, that has to be number one. I don't think there's kind of any question, given the depth of that comeback and how unlikely it appeared.
And the fact, I mean, look, he was on Monday Night Football.
Right. So the whole nation was watching. Well,
yeah.
Let me rephrase that. The whole nation started watching.
Yeah.
Most of the nation turned off at some point.
Yeah. So that's completely understandable. Other games of memory, great games of memory.
Has to be.
And they're all playoff games.
Clearly the Super Bowl. I mean, that's no question. I would think Pennington.
Well, I said of memory.
Pennington beating Manning in the playoffs.
Yes. Okay.
Has to be another one, right? I think Sanchez beating the Patriots.
Well,
up in New England
the Jets beating the Patriots. Yes.
Yep.
The Jets beating the Patriots. Yes. That was actually our last playoff win, by the way.
Yep.
Back in 2010.
In there. I think Freeman McNeil against the Bengals when he ran for 200 yards.
Absolutely. That's one of the moments in playoff history I remember the most probably was Freeman 200 yards rushing in a playoff game. And then the next week, Lance Mel, 2 interceptions.
Yep. I think the Jets beating Oakland as well, as you mentioned, is another one.
Yep.
In terms of the greatest moments.
But also because they were the Raiders. Because we actually beat the Raiders in the playoffs.
Correct.
And we were going to the Super Bowl until it started raining in Miami.
Until they didn't put a tarp on the field in Miami.
So,
although isn't that the year? Did Miami win the Super Bowl or they lost to Washington?
They lost.
That year? That was a 28 counter gap play with Riggins off tackle that they lost.
Yes, I believe you're right. So, that was a David Woodley team, I think.
Correct. And then the next year they drafted Marino.
There you go. Let's talk about losses, tough losses.
Well, I mean, we just named one.
Yes, we did.
That's the worst one of them all, in my opinion.
The championship game?
The second worst has to be the 2 championship games. One, they were up at halftime against Indy and lost.
Yes, because we had the lead at halftime.
Manning with a bomb to start it off and killed us. And then
Don't forget in that game, though, the turning point was Shaun Green's injury.
Yep.
Because and if it wasn't for, and that might have started his digression, because that, remember, we have to remember that Mark Sanchez, it wasn't just the Jet defense of Rex Ryan, it was the running game, and it was the two-headed monster, but Shaun Green was the one that would come in the second half and wear teams down. And once Shaun Green left the Colt game in the second half, it was over.
Right.
So
I mean, I think obviously the following year against Pittsburgh, the 4 cracks from the one and not getting in, even they were behind, because if they scored there, I still think they probably win that game because they had all the momentum, and they gave it back by not being able to score on those 4 plays. That was one of them. And then also,
we also led the championship game against Denver. We led them at halftime.
Well, again, that was the big play with McCaffrey running a skinny post over the middle and nobody getting him, and that just started the floodgates.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is that some of these, especially the championship games, but these big playoff games, it's not like we've been in a lot of playoff games either. There are a few playoff games that kind of, we lost to the Patriots. Oh, yeah, we lost to the Oilers. That you kind of, okay, you don't remember, nothing great. But for the most part, like 50% of the time that we lose in the playoffs, it's memorable. It's really excruciatingly painful. So that's kind of the whole idea of why it's being a Jet fan is painful, because we've had to deal with painful losses in big spots in the postseason, not just losses.
Agreed.
All right. So lastly, we've got less than 5 minutes. How do the Jets let's be positive. We're going to fast forward to the end of December, and you're going to wake up after being out cold for 3 months, and when you wake up, the first thing that you're going to see is the television on, and they're talking about the Jets getting ready for a wild card game. How did it happen?
Sam Darnold comes back right away.
Well, no doubt. Does he have to come back this week?
Have to, no.
Okay.
Beneficial, yes.
If they lose this week, do they have to beat Dallas and New England?
Probably yes.
Okay.
Probably yes. Chris Herndon has to be a major weapon when he comes back.
Absolutely.
The offensive line has to gel starting this week.
Yes.
If
Darnold is healthy and playing, correct.
Right. Quinnen Williams needs to come back and be a disruptive force.
C.J. Mosley, of course, has to come back.
C.J. Mosley has to come back. Leonard Williams has to remember he was the 6th overall pick in the draft and start playing like it.
Yeah. Yep. We need some pressure.
And somebody in the defensive backfield not named Jamal Adams and Marcus May to step up.
Like a Trumaine Johnson. He's got to start earning his paycheck.
Correct.
I don't know if they're going to make a trade. I'll say this. I think, when is the deadline, by the way? Deadline is, we still have a few more weeks. So I would venture to say that if the Jets were to find a way, Darnold, of course, would have to play this week. So let's say Darnold somehow plays this week and they win the next 2 games. Let's say they win 2 out of the next 3 games.
The trade deadline, just so you know, is 4 weeks from yesterday. So Tuesday, October 30th was last year's deadline. Okay. So I'm looking at this year's to kind of see when the 2019 deadline is. It wouldn't shock me if it's around that range.
Right, so
that's actually last year was later than I thought, because I always used to think it was a little bit earlier.
No, well, they moved it. Yeah, they made sure that we had more time now. So
29th of October, so 4 weeks from yesterday.
So let's say they go 2-1, because I don't think Douglas is going to think of making any significant trades unless they go 2-1 in their next 3 games, because he's not going to waste a season of time with a player for nothing, especially a big player. But if they win 2 of the next 3 games, and obviously Darnold has to come back this week for them to realistically do it, then I think he'll find a way to make a deal. Now, there's already rumors about Von Miller now. Jalen Ramsey's out
there. Which would be crazy to get Von Miller, but I would be skipping like crazy.
The only thing is, with a player like Miller compared to Ramsey, Miller has got a couple of more years left. That's it. He's already been playing for a while. So, and he's a speed rusher. And I haven't seen him sacking anybody this year.
I
Yeah.
agree. But he's also, in my opinion, a lot less polarizing than Jalen Ramsey. And he's also somebody that's done it for a lot longer and done it at a high level and on a bigger scale than somebody like Ramsey.
All right. Either way, I'm not sure this is. Look, Jets got to win games in order to make some deals. Let's see if they start on Sunday. Next week when we talk, hopefully we'll be talking about a win. And if we do, we know Sam Darnold will be playing. If no Sam Darnold, well, it's on to the Cowboys, and hopefully we'll get Darnold and Mosley back, and we can start the rest of the season. So, Jan, appreciate it. It was fun going over the all-time team and the all-time games, et cetera, et cetera. Best of luck watching the game on Sunday, because I know how hard it is to watch these games unless Sam Darnold's playing, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good.